I asked 1000 readers if listening to an audiobook count as reading a book, and the results shocked me. You mean shocked us, right? Because we actually got to see a lot of different comments in favor and against the case of audiobooks counting as reading books. Precisely, so today we wanted to bring you these very heated, different points of view so that you can decide for yourself if listening to an audiobook count as reading a book or not. And make sure to stick till the end, because then we'll see the results of what 1000 readers said about these, the statistics. I will be making the point of listening to an audiobook count as reading a book. And the first point that I wanted to make is accessibility. There's a lot of people that might not be able to read, either because they don't have the vision well, or they don't feel comfortable reading, or because they might have dyslexia. In this case, I believe that they are accessing word for word the same story. They're just consuming the story in a different way, right? The modality is different. I think you can argue the same for blind people. Why Braille is different. You can access word to word via touch. Meanwhile, with the audiobook, you are listening. You're not getting a summarized version. You are getting the full story. I will be making a case against audiobooks considered as reading a book. And in response to that point, what I wanted to say is, do you consider reading when someone is telling you a story? No, right? You know that you are getting the story, but you are not reading to it. You are listening to that. You are not accessing this information in the same way. For me, it's the same as saying that if you read the lyrics of music, you are listening to that music. That is not even the same, right? Or even that the illiterate are able to read because they are listening to a story. They can definitely get the story, but do they know how to read if they listen to the story? No, right? Therefore, the idea of reading, it's not there. I definitely get the point of the illiterate, but in here, let me ask you a question. If you're watching a movie and you're reading the subtitles, are you reading the movie or are you still watching the movie? I would wager that we are saying that you're watching the movie, right? For me, the case of the music, it's not the same. You have instruments, you have voices that you can not get across only by reading the lyrics. Maybe if you're a prodigy and you hear music in your mind, then yes, but you are missing a lot of different things while reading the lyrics. Meanwhile, with a book, it's just the word, and that's the same what we get in the different points. Oh, absolutely, but bear in mind that there's a difference while reading. It takes a certain stillness, you need to block your time, a focus. You get to read in just one moment. You cannot do anything else. And I think this is one of the main key differences of consuming information differently. Why it matters that you are reading versus listening to it. If I want to read a book, I'm only able to do that. I need to sit down and read, keep everything away and just follow the story, embed myself to it. Meanwhile, if you're listening to it, you might be walking, driving, cooking. There are a lot of different things. So it almost entitles a different amount, even a little bit more effort, because you only need to be doing that. Yeah, I can understand that, but I will argue that you also need to be very present when you are listening to an audiobook. It's not enough that you just put it on and that you start doing all the stuff. It might happen the same when you're reading. You might be reading and then discover that you just don't know what you read. There's not that comprehension. You just skim through paragraphs and you were like, what? I was daydreaming. And that happens the same while listening to an audio. And I would say that you need the same amount of effort, because you need to be focused. Yeah, you can be doing all the stuff with your hand, but you need to still be focused in the story if you want to get the same comprehension on it. Of course, it will depend on the person and the level of willingness to get that story across, which I honestly think is the same while reading. You can always decide to move faster, even if you are not understanding what you're reading. You can decide to speed up what you're listening and maybe go a little bit more to what you're able to comprehend, sacrificing that in order to get more done. But isn't this the same as when you're reading and you decide to just read faster, maybe the first paragraphs, reading here and there the main keywords to see what happens, and pass faster is log? Yeah, in a way it is, but to me there's something inherently powerful of just reading, because it's just you and the words as the author wanted it. You don't have any other external bias that might be influencing your reading experience. If you are listening to an audiobook, what you have is a narrator, and then you have an extra condition that it's changing slightly what we understand of reading, right? And the proper experience changes. So it's different. Personally find that it's a little bit misleading to add the books that you are listening via audio towards your reading goals. Because if I hear that you read 100 books last year, but maybe 50% of them were listened via audio, I get these unrealistic expectations that I'm not reading fast enough, that I'm not able to extract that much time, and that I am inefficient. I suggest that you are more explicit with the way in which you are reading, because the proper act of decoding the symbols to meaning, that it's only 2 books, and I think it's a completely different experience where you are listening to an audio. I can agree that not being explicit about the way in which you read all of those books can create those unrealistic expectations, and from now on I will be more explicit with that. However, I want to be clear that there are studies that have demonstrated how if you are reading and if you are listening, the areas in your brain are exactly the same. Of course, granted, if you're reading, the visual areas are activated. Meanwhile, if you're listening, it's your listening areas that are activated. However, the act of decoding those words, either spoken or written, and to create meaning, and for that to build a world, to get yourself embedded in this amazing story that you're building for yourself, that has been proven to be the same. The same areas get involved. And this was proven at Berkeley, where we got 2 groups. One of them just were reading to the story, and the other one got the story narrated to them. And the results were main areas were activated, the same areas, which got the investigators to conclude that it's the same effect in your brain. And I think that it's a very powerful learning. We should consider both at the same level. Yes, I can understand that there are different ways, but both are at the same level. There's not one that needs more effort than the other, because in your brain, the effort, it's the same. And also, isn't there a part of yourself that want to listen stories? I bet there is, because when majority of the population is reading, they are reading aloud silently in their brains. When we learn how to read, the first thing that we do is to read aloud, and then we stop reading aloud and we read silently in our brains. Isn't that a part of reading and listening at the same time? Well, maybe, but I stick to the point that reading, it's a different verb to listening, and therefore we should not be taking both as the same thing. Yes, we are consuming the information, but it's not the same thing. And in here, I'm really talking about semantics, about the meaning of the words. Oh, I can absolutely understand that. And personally for me, I do consider both at the same level, but I will from now on be more explicit on the verb that I'm using in order to get those books done. However, same level, both have the same impact. And do you want to see the results of what 1,000 readers told us? What were those statistics? Hell yeah, tell me, am I winning? Well, 82% of readers said that listening to an audio counts as reading a book. Meanwhile, 18% said that it does not count. I hope that with this information you have enough to decide for yourself what you think, and let me know down below in the comments what's your opinion here. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope to see you soon.